All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. And for anybody who has checked out this wonderful YouTube channel, the two gentlemen that I am sitting across from on this specific edition, you know them pretty well, and I'm talking about AJ and Andy. Greetings on this evening, gentlemen. How is everybody doing?
Very good. Very
Doing
good, William.
great. Good to see you, man.
Well, listen, I mean, there's a lot of baseball stuff to talk about. Initially, we had our topic in place that we were going to discuss. We still are going to discuss said topic. But, I mean, I know that the NFL gets somewhat some pub at their trade deadline, and I know that the NBA's trade deadline, it is fast and furious. Major League Baseball today has simply said, hold my beer. Because, I mean, it has been a frenzy as far as players having to catch flights, going from one city to another, you name it. And I think the biggest thing for me that I'm looking at with this trade deadline in particular this year is the fact that it was really an arms race because the contenders who definitely have eyes on the postseason really went to work as far as stockpiling arms for not only their rotations, but more importantly, their bullpens. And I think a lot of teams that have an eye on winning it all this year, they're sitting back and looking at what the Dodgers did last year when they won the World Series. The Dodgers just came at you with fresh arm after fresh arm after fresh arm out of their bullpen. And of course, they rode that wave to a World Series. It was hectic today as far as what went down at the trade deadline, especially with the arms that were being shipped around.
Yeah, it was, especially around our neighborhood. I mean, we picked up a lot of arms. They picked up the Detroit Tigers picked up seven, including Kyle Finnegan, closer from the Nationals. And I know the Phillies, jog my memory here, William. The Phillies picked up the top closer, I believe, on the market too. And
They picked up
they gave up,
Yeah, they picked up Johan Duran from Minnesota.
Johan Duran.
Yeah, from Minnesota.
yep, Yep, and they gave, and me and Hoffman were talking about this off the air, the way Dombrowski does stuff. I mean, he sold their farm system, the number four and the number six prospect that they have, and I mean that's not selling the farm, but that's his style. You know what I mean? Like he has no problem getting rid of his top prospects to go get stuff. I mean, we know that here in Detroit as well, as we've seen him, well, get rid of our entire farm system before he left.
Listen, he did it. He
But
did. He did it in Boston as well. It's just like, I mean, you know what you're going to get with Dave Dombrowski. He's a guy. He's going to push all of his chips to the middle of the table. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, I'm just looking at things like at this trade deadline, and I mean, it was hectic. I mean, we talked about the Phillies. They also picked up Harrison Bader, the outfielder from the Twins, and of course, we saw the Mets pick up Bader last year before the trade deadline, and he was a key, utility outfielder for them. How about the Yankees? Okay, because the Yankees are getting a lot of flack for being non-existent. They got Ryan McMahon for as a third baseman from Colorado, much needed defensive improvement there. But today, just prior to the trade deadline, the Yankees really shored up their bullpen. They picked up Camilo Doval, the closer from San Francisco, as well as David Bednar from Pittsburgh. And the Yankees, I mean, it's one of those things. They're really shoring up their pitching staff there.
yeah, I mean, and that's typical Yankees fashion. I mean, they're going to go out and get what they want, and and that's like you said, it's an arms race. When you got guys like Dombrowski and Harris that are going to go out and they're going to go get arms,
Hmm.
you have to do the same, you know. And the Yankees, that's something that's not foreign to them. You know what I mean?
Listen, absolutely not. And I mean, sticking with the American League, a team that is in the catbird seat in the Central. Talking about the Detroit Tigers, you alluded to it earlier. They picked up Kyle Finnegan from the Washington Nationals. That's a big improvement for their bullpen. They picked up Charlie Morton from the Baltimore Orioles, and of course, Charlie Morton started off the year. He was very slow. Okay, and I was one who said, you know what, if he's going to keep pitching like this, especially given his age, maybe he might want to think about hanging it up. But Charlie Morton has improved and gotten his sea legs as the season has progressed. And it's one of those where I know that the Tigers just lost. Oh gosh, his name is slipping me right now. I know they lost one.
Reese Olson.
Right, they lost one of their starters for Tommy John. You still got Tarek Skubal, arguably the best pitcher in the AL this year. Okay, so now you're just bringing in another veteran who's kind of been there and done it in the postseason, and also a veteran that's going to be good for that young Tigers pitching staff in the clubhouse. And like I said with Detroit, they're going to win this division now because I mean. Kansas City, made the playoffs last year. The Royals, they've been up and down. Cleveland, we saw the Guardians threw in the towel today. The White Sox, forget about it. The Twins threw in the towel as well. So this is basically Detroit's division to lose at this point, and not only just getting, yeah, I mean, not just winning the division, but it's one of those things where what can you do when you get to October? That's going to be the other big thing for the Tigers because I'm one of those people who I really feel that once you get to October, it's a crapshoot. Any and everything can happen. So, I'm looking at the Tigers right now. They definitely shored up their position as well.
They did. I think the big thing around here that people were upset with was they didn't go out and get a big bat. They knew they needed pitching. They knew they needed pitching in that bullpen, and I think with Finnegan they got it.
Hmm.
And with Morton, like to what you said with Morton, like they are a very young team overall, but to
Hmm.
have a pitcher that can kind of steady things if it gets a little rocky in the postseason, to kind of talk to the guys in the clubhouse and kind of mentor them to some degree, that'll be helpful. But I think I think that's what the fans were looking for was a big splash signing like a Suarez was what everybody was talking about, and it never,
That
came to
that's
fruition.
that's true. I mean, for about the last month or so, I've been just, wanting them to pick up more pitchers, though, honestly, because Skubal he's the best pitcher in the AL, but he can't do it all himself, and we need at least one or two more reliable, arms, especially like in our middle relief. And then I know closing is going to like fall apart. It's hard to, as a Detroit sports fan, you always lose confidence. We saw what they did last year, where they were like the worst team in the league, and then they got so hot and they made the playoffs.
Hmm.
I can see them doing the exact opposite this year and just cooling off big time. Seeing the Twins creep up and end up stealing the division. Doesn't seem likely, but I can see it happening because I'm a pessimistic sports fan.
Well,
Oof.
listen, well, I mean,
But I mean, I'm glad that we picked up the arms that we did. We picked up like what was it, six arms, six
Seven.
pitchers, seven pitchers. We picked up
Seven.
seven pitchers, so I'm happy about that. What Tucky was telling me earlier tonight, he's like, well, yeah, but there were seven kind of mediocre guys, and like I would rather have like seven mediocre guys that we picked up, and even if one of them hits, one of them is great. That's fantastic. That'll inspire our bats. I'm happy with that. Would have been cool to get Suarez, but I, you know, I'm happy with what we have right now. It'd also be nice to have more veteran talent,
Yeah.
but right now it is what it is, and I think our biggest deficit was pitching with the Tigers.
well, you hinted at Eugenio Suarez going from Arizona to Seattle, and that definitely enhances Seattle's chances of getting to the postseason. But I love the counter today from the Houston Astros as far as them bringing back Carlos Correa. And
Yeah,
Houston's a very interesting team because we saw them let Alex Bregman walk after the last offseason, and he's in Boston. And of course, a couple of years ago it was Correa, and we know the whole fiasco where he agreed to sign with the Giants, then he failed the physical. Then he agreed to sign with the Mets, and then he failed their physical. And he ended up back in Minnesota. And I think it was just one of those where I think he's more comfortable there. And the Astros are one of those teams to me that they just simply know how to piece it together. And for like the last several years, they've consistently been written off in the American League West. And then you're looking late September, who's usually in first place in the West? It's Houston, and of course, they're there once again. And they just continuously find a way to piece this thing together and find themselves in the mix to make a run.
I agree with you, William. That's when I seen the headline on that. I was like, Houston's a team that Detroit beat. Was it the divisional round or the
Yeah. Yeah.
in the playoffs last year? And you know, y they're like a dark horse, right? Like you said,
Hmm.
they just kind of do their thing out in the West. You
Right.
don't hear a whole lot of headlines from them, but here they are buying again, going into the postseason run here at the end of the season, bringing Carlos Correa back, and they're going to be a formidable opponent.
Hmm.
Like they're consistently there. They find a way to piece it together, and that's kind of just been their MO, like you said. I agree with you.
Listen, I'm looking, we talked about the Phillies. I also look at the Mets. I mean, I've been saying this for like the last month or so. I feel like the Mets and Phillies, they're gonna keep trading off. As far as who wins that, or like who's gonna be in first place, and that and I still feel
Mhm.
like that. But nonetheless, we saw the Phillies go out there and get Johan Duran. They also got Harrison Bader, and the Mets, they just went all in on their bullpen. They got Gregory Soto last Friday from Baltimore. Then they picked up Ryan Helsley from St. Louis, and then the reliever Taylor Rogers, the submarine thrower from San Francisco. And credit to David Stearns, their general, not the general manager, but the president of baseball ops, because listen, he doesn't have starters who can consistently go deep into games. Probably the only starter that the Mets have right now that could probably go deep into games consistently for them is David Peterson. So what do you do now? You shorten the game, and then you short up the back end of your bullpen. You already have Edwin Diaz, who's one of the top closers in baseball. You bring in a submarine thrower like Rogers from San Francisco. You also bring in Helsley from St. Louis. You also bring in Soto from Baltimore. So it's kind of like, you know what? Pick your poison. I like what the Mets did there, and I know that some of their fan base is saying, well, maybe they gave up too much to get some of these guys. Hey, listen, it's one of those things. They're all in, and that's what it's all about. Because I think this trade deadline has really shown which franchises are all in as far as making the postseason and getting to the World Series, and which ones
Mhm.
aren't. And Steve Cohen, he's been the Mets team owner now for I think about 5 years, and he talked about changing the culture. And I think one of the things that he has wanted to do is emulate what the Dodgers do. Basically, the Dodgers are there every single year. The Dodgers are one of those franchises in baseball where they can go out there and make a trade for a guy. They could get off of three of their prospects, and they won't skip a beat because their system is so doggone deep. And credit to the Mets for trying to go out there. And I look at it like this: they're basically trying to keep up with the Joneses in the NL East because it's going to come down to either them or Philadelphia who wins that division. But then, secondly, you want to take care of your business if you're both New York and Philadelphia because you want to try to go out there and get a wild card spot at the very least. And it's going to be tough because there's contenders coming out of both the Central and West this year. But I like what the Mets did as far as shoring up their bullpen at the deadline.
Absolutely. William, do you think that's going to be the tightest race in all of Major League Baseball's the NL East?
I think there's going to be a couple of tight races if you ask me. I mean, I'm looking at this race in the Central right now in the National League side with the Cubs and the Brewers, and of course, the Cubs really needed to win that game yesterday because Milwaukee had taken the first two games. They had a two-game lead, so it's still one game. I think the Yankees I think they try to tighten it up with Toronto, and we didn't talk about Toronto, and they made some interesting moves. That Mets Phillies uh bike race right there. I think it's going to be back and forth. It's probably going to be one of those things. It'll probably be like week 2 or 3 in the NFL, and we still haven't decided who is going to win the National League East. So to your point, yes, I do think it's going to be one of, if not, the tightest race this year in baseball.
Yeah. So give us a little bit about the Toronto Blue Jays there, William. I know as of late, like they were hot, they swept us, but then they kind of faltered a little bit. What did they do here in free agency?
They
Or
made
not the trade deadline.
they made that trade with Baltimore during the doubleheader the other day. That was first and foremost. And then today, or I think it was yesterday actually, the Blue Jays really rolled the dice. They picked up Shane Bieber from Cleveland, and if you know, Shane Bieber hasn't pitched in more than a year as he's recovering from Tommy John. He just recently had a couple of rehab starts, in the Guardians minor league system. But it's a gamble if you're Toronto, but I think they're backing on Shane Bieber being the Shane Bieber that he was a couple of years ago when he won the Cy Young Award in the American League. Listen, it's one of those. I like to gamble if you're Toronto. I truly do because it's one of those. It's high risk, high reward, one of those type things. They've got themselves a little cushion on the Yankees. They've beaten up on the Yankees recently, and of course, that's why they have that lead in the American League East. So, listen, I'm all for it if you're Toronto, honestly.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I think I look at that and it's high risk, high reward, but boy, I just that seems like a lot of risk. You're banking on a lot of things, I feel, to go right for him to really be a weapon come postseason time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, and I feel like with them, correct me if I'm wrong, but not having as massive as a lead as the Tigers do in the Central over the Yankees, I think there might have been other routes maybe that they could have gone
Mm-hmm.
as far as acquiring some other arms. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like you're really taking a gamble. It's almost like saying, "Hey, we know we got this division. We're gearing up for the postseason."
Yeah, and like to your point right now, Toronto, they're only up 3.5 on the Yankees, and I think it was 5.5 the other day. They had an opportunity to extend it to 6.5, and unfortunately for their sake, they didn't. And the Yankees are going to make another push at that division title before the year's out. I mean, you figure the Yankees, they're treading water right now without Judge, in the lineup. And who knows what shape he's going to be back when they bring him back, because they're talking about, starting him out as a DH, and I think that really hinders their outfield if they're going to put Giancarlo Stanton in right, because Giancarlo Stanton can't stay healthy, and of course, his age and stuff like that. But I think now is the time if you're Toronto with that injury to try to push ahead against the Yankees. I mean, the Yankees, they just won that series at home with Tampa, who's right in the mix there. Uh, I think another thing, if you're Toronto, the three teams that are behind you in that division, Boston, Tampa, and the Yankees, you're hopeful that they could somehow beat up on each other and kind of, you take care of your business against the teams that you're supposed to beat. And then, maybe, you can get a little bit of distance, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to happen. But nonetheless, I think it was a risk clearly, as far as I'm going out there and picking up a Shane Bieber. But I'm of one of those, you know what, high risk, high reward. And hey, if it works out, they're going to look like geniuses. And of course, if it doesn't, you're going to sit up there and you're going to look like a couple of dummies if you're the Blue Jays front office.
Yeah. William, we could probably talk all night about the trade deadline and the winners
Mhm.
and losers because there was a ton of moves today. Um, what what do you think the likelihood is of a lockout in 2026?
Well, I definitely want to touch on that. I just want to say one quick thing before we jump off of that. A couple of
No,
things.
and we
Yeah.
can get back to the deadline too.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
but yeah,
But all right. So I
no,
mean,
go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna talk about San Diego. They picked up Mason Miller
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the A's for their bullpen, and of course, Mason Miller's been a solid guy for the A's. Like he's gonna go down in history. Of course, he was the last pitcher on the mound for the A's at the Coliseum last year when they beat Texas. They also picked up J.P. Sears, and then the fact that Cleveland and the White Sox got greedy. Luis Robert is still in Chicago. Stephen Kwan is still in Cleveland. So like
Yeah.
those things definitely stood out for me. But like what you were saying before, as far as the lockout, I've talked about this, and I don't think that people understand that it's more of a threat for us not to have baseball in 2027 than they believe because the owners have their feet dug in as far as wanting a salary cap, and the union doesn't. And that is a big gap right there. And of course, some of the owners are going to say, well,
Yeah.
it works for other sports. And I get where the union is coming from because I feel like Major League Baseball, probably in the last 25 years, has gone out of their way to penalize the teams that want to spend money, but they don't penalize the teams that don't spend money. And I say that from the standpoint you don't have a salary cap floor or you don't have a salary floor. And I think that is the biggest issue. You're penalizing teams for spending like, more than 200 or 250 million dollars, but then we've got teams out there that are having payrolls that are like 25 and 30 million dollars. And I think one of the biggest things that has hurt that in recent years. Thank goodness that Jerry Reinsdorf is in an agreement to start selling the White Sox. It's going to come to, I think it was Justin Ishbia, the brother of Matt Ishbia, who owns the Phoenix Suns. So
Yeah.
I think Justin Ishbia has already started pumping cash into the team. My point is this: the White Sox began this year with the 28th lowest payroll in baseball. We're talking about one of the biggest media markets in this country, and the White Sox have one of the smallest payrolls. So, of course, that's going to allow, others like the small market teams rather to say, well, if the White Sox don't spend money, why should we? And of course, it helps to villainize, the Mets and the Dodgers and the Yankees, guys who are willing to spend that money. And I've always been of the line, I'm not trying to sound too long winded here, but I've always been of the mindset that just because you're a small market team doesn't mean that you can't compete. You look at the turnaround that Kansas City enjoyed last year. They got to the postseason. You think about what Tampa has been able to do for the last 20 years, and even the Rays, made some headways today before the trade deadline to like try to bolster their position. You look at the A's all of those years in Oakland; they pieced it together. And then on the flip side, you have a team like the Pirates who they had that little uprising about 10, 12 years ago, and then they're right back in the toilet. And then a team like the Colorado Rockies, not a big market, but not a small market either. And I really think teams like the Rockies are a flat out embarrassment to baseball because we just saw the White Sox break the record last year for most losses in the season. The Rockies have themselves a puncher's chance to break that record this year. And I think for me, if I see that, that's a bigger issue because you only have a handful of teams that want to go out there and spend money. Some of these teams ain't trying. That's just my thoughts on it.
Right.
Uh,
Do you want to go off me?
Okay, I mean, I was just going to mention, and maybe I'm way off base, but I think like from a business standpoint, a team like the White Sox, they've always kind of been like the black sheep of the family in Chicago. Like they really have the south side of Chicago. It's a dangerous area. Families ain't going there. If you're going to Chicago and you're going to go to a baseball game or anything, I mean, you're going to pick the Cubs over the White Sox.
Hmm.
The White Sox were right where the Rockies, are right now. They were there last year. We were talking about them being the
Yeah.
worst team in the history of baseball. I That's not justification for them not spending money. They did. I felt like they thought they were going all out and spending money or getting talent and like Oscar Colas and Luis Robert and guys like that. Um, Andrew Vaughn. They thought he was going to be like you know a really hot player, and it's just like it's just not gone the way that they wanted it to go. Conversely, if you look at like Colorado, the Colorado Rockies, they're one of the best stadiums in all of baseball. Families love going there. They've got like perennial food and all that stuff. They can get away with not like shelling out a ton of money, I think, and they probably feel like they did their due diligence in getting someone like Chris Bryant, who was a superstar at the time, Um, I don't know. I think there's a lot of factors in play, and the salary cap, man. Oh man, I have a lot of thoughts on it. What were you thinking, Kentucky?
Well, no, I was agreeing. Was going to agree with William. If you're looking for parity in the sport, because baseball reminds me, like you got high A, you got low A and high A in the minors.
Sure.
You baseball more than any other professional sport at the professional level is you almost have the same thing. There are a handful of teams that are sellers every year come trade
Yep.
deadline. There are a handful of teams that when the contracts are up on the guys that come through their farm system, they're going to New York. Tarek Skubal, probably going to be a Met. You know what I mean? Like he's
Yeah.
probably off to bigger and better. The Tigers aren't going to be able to hang with them. Well, I shouldn't say they aren't able to. They choose not to.
Right.
Okay, because you can pay them, but it's going to come at a cost to other things. So I think to even the playing field out for the guys on the lower end that are actually trying, but they are truly a smaller market, they're
Hmm.
truly not going to have as much money. You got to cap the top. But at the
Hmm.
same time, you have a handful of teams that just don't try. So you can sit there and you can cap using round numbers 200 million to the Yankees and the Dodgers all day long. That's not going to make the Miami Marlins that have a $69 million a year payroll. They're not going to shell out that. They're not going to use that extra 100 million to get up to the cap to sign a Juan Soto. That's
No.
not going to make them do it unless you have the floor. You have to have a floor. You have to have, and I'm just using round numbers. These are just made up. Everybody's got to be between 150 and 200 million for your payroll.
Yeah.
Sure.
You set the parameters. Everybody's got to be there, and then that will give you the parity because everyone will fight for the talent. The union will never go for that because the players don't want a cap on how much they can get paid.
Listen, I think the prime example of that, and this is why I think we're going to have a work stoppage. Just look at the recent showdown in the Phillies locker room between Bryce Harper and Rob Manfred. Basically, putting it mildly, and trying to keep it PG-13 here, Bryce Harper basically told Rob Manfred to get the F out of the clubhouse. And Rob Manfred was like
Mm-hmm.
he clapped right back. I'm not going anywhere. And it's like, the players don't believe in Rob Manfred. Of course, at the end of the day, Rob Manfred is there for the owners. Tony Clark, who's the head of the union, I do believe Tony Clark was in the big leagues at the time of the '94 strike. I know, he was prominent for the
Yeah.
Tigers, in the '90s and stuff like that. And I feel like it would be the most Major League Baseball type thing right now to have a strike or a lockout. And the reason is because your game is coming back. The popularity
Yeah.
is there.
Yeah.
Why do you want to mess with the sauce right now? I don't get it.
Because you're right, though, that would be the most Major League Baseball thing in the world to do is for them to shoot themselves in the foot and sink their brand again. You're absolutely
Because
right.
that's what they did before was they sunk
Yeah,
their brand, and it took the home run race with
Yeah.
McGuire and Sosa to even bring it back to even a
yeah,
partiality of what it was. It's
yeah,
still not what it was.
Mhm.
Like America's game right now is the NFL
yeah,
Yeah.
and college football. Like football is America's game. Like they've overtaken, and it all started. You can trace it all back to when MLB went on strike. They lost it. The people just would not tune back in. It's a slow game to begin with, and now you're trying to get it back. And to Rob Manfred's credit, the pitch clock is great. I People will have their opinions on it. I love it. It speeds the game up. You got to have a little more action to be able to compete in today's society where things are constantly
Right.
coming and going. People are constantly trying to be stimulated. But you can't, like you said, you can't go back and shoot yourself in the foot again.
yeah,
Like you're
and
finally starting to get it back.
yeah, and it's like not only that, but the regional sports networks basically dying out around the big leagues, and of course they're looking for new media partners, streaming services, you name it. And I know them and ESPN, meaning Major League Baseball, they walked away from the deal. Looks like they might be possibly coming back. You're looking for new media partners. How are you going to look for new media partners with the threat of a lockout, looming over your game? And not only that, you ripped the Athletics from Oakland. There's no reason why the A's should be playing anyplace else. You want to put them in Vegas because you're trying to ride the coattails of the success that the NFL and NHL have had there. It's not going to work out the same way for the A's in Vegas. That's just my 2 cents. Now you're trying to
I agree.
sell.
Yeah.
Now you're trying to sell baseball in a new city, and you might not even have it when it's ready to go. Again, make it make sense. That's the biggest thing for me, man.
Yeah. Oh, you're 100% right. I just want to piggyback on what you said. I, Baseball has the longest season on anybody. It got 162 games to try to force a major league team in there. Uh, that's
Yeah.
exhausting, you know. I don't see it working either, honestly. I think they're gonna end up going back to Oakland or something's gonna happen. I don't
Listen,
see them staying in Vegas, that's for sure.
listen. Like, the NHL went there, and they had an expansion team, and the Golden Knights have had a lot of success, and I think that opened up a lot of eyes. The Raiders, it works because the Raiders are the Raiders. The Raiders have fans everywhere. And the Raiders are, but even with that said, there's not a lot
Yeah.
of Raiders fans at Allegiant Stadium. If you're a Packers fan, for an example, okay, you could sit up there and say, you know what? Let's catch a flight out Friday. We can go, walk through the casinos on Saturday, have a few drinks. We'll be ready to go for Sunday afternoon, watch the game, and then we, head back home. You could do that if you're a Cowboys fan in Vegas, Niners, Patriots, whomever.
Yep.
Nobody is sitting down in the middle of the week in Las Vegas to watch a baseball game. There is too much to do
Right.
there. Okay, I've been there before. Nobody is thinking about baseball in Vegas in the middle of the week unless you are at one of the sports betting rooms at one of those big casinos and you're placing money down. That is it. So nobody's
Yeah.
going to sit there and watch a baseball game. It's a recipe for disaster. And then getting back to the whole potential salary cap issue with baseball. Again, like I said, I feel like they've done multiple levels, excuse me, as far as trying to penalize the big market teams that want to spend money. And it's going to be just like it is in football, with deferred money. It's going to be just like it is with the NBA, with teams for years are using, like, the bird rights and the mid-level exceptions, this, that, and the third. The teams that want to win are going to find loopholes. Look at what the Dodgers have done. I mean, what, Shohei really should be getting $70 million a year, and he's only taking 2 million because he's like basically living off the New Balance money. His money's deferred. I think some of Freddie Freeman's contract has been deferred. Some of Mookie Betts' contract has been deferred. So the teams that want to win, they're going to find loopholes. And I think Major League Baseball needs to accept it. Again, we talked about the floor. How about some of these small market teams? Not all of them do it. Okay, I want to be clear on that. But what about the
Yeah.
small market teams that are raking it in via the luxury tax? And Major League Baseball, just completely, in my opinion, just turns a blind eye to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean that they're gaming the system, and the thing is like you said, to piggyback off that, William, is the people that want to win are going to figure out a way to win, and those are the guys that are currently spending the money right now. That's not the problem. The problem is the parity, and the problem is not, and the problem is parity, and you want people to try to win. So the issue is the people that aren't trying to win, the owners that aren't trying to win, the owners that raking a big payday. They get all this money, and we can just put whoever out there because we're still selling tickets. We're
Yeah,
still got the TV contracts. We
right.
still got the streaming service. We're still selling jerseys. We don't, though, that's the problem, and that's what they need to attack. So a salary cap is I don't want to say it's useless because if you don't have one and you still have all this, just doing the luxury tax thing, what you're going to have is you're going to have the guys saying, well, you created a floor for us, but we're still going to stay at the bottom because their excuse is going to be we still can't compete.
Yeah.
So you still have to have that cap, but you got to have the floor. You have to have a combination of both. Like I said, you got to set the parameters on both ends.
Listen, you alluded to the Marlins earlier, and I know Jeffrey Loria doesn't own the team anymore, but when they played at, I guess it's Dolphin Stadium now, Joe Robbie Stadium, whatever they're calling it, when they shared that stadium with the Dolphins, you kept hearing Jeffrey Loria crying about we need a new stadium to compete. We need a new stadium to compete. So what did they do? They tore down the Orange Bowl, which they should have never done. They should have just renovated that. Miami Hurricanes football would have had a legit home for their games right now. But nonetheless, they tore down the Orange Bowl, built the stadium for the Marlins. Jeffrey Loria gave the Mirage, like, okay, now I'm going to spend money and we're going to compete. And after less than one season, what did he do? He had a fire sale, and the Marlins have consistently gone back to what they were, being a minor league team. And honestly, the only time that Marlins Stadium has a sellout is whenever the World Baseball Classic games are there. I mean, if they get 10,000 people to one of their home games, that's a lot. And I feel like you suckered people in as far as giving you money to build a stadium. I'll give an organization like the Brewers credit. Milwaukee, one of the smallest markets in baseball. They have a system and they go out there and they compete every single year. And you're looking at the Brewers right now. They just made the playoffs again last year, lost a heartbreaking series to the Mets in the wild card round. Milwaukee's right there with the Cubs atop the Central. Milwaukee's probably going to be a playoff team once again. Another small market team, Kansas City. They had that turnaround. They made the playoffs last year. Not only that, they know that they have themselves a star in Bobby Witt Jr. Bobby Witt Jr., I say within the next 3 to 5 years is probably going to be AL MVP. Okay, with that said, what did Kansas City do?
Yeah.
They gave him a long-term extension now, and it's decent money, but it's still on the cheap in comparison to what you would have to pay a Bobby Witt Jr. 5 or 6 years from now. You've basically gotten him locked up for the next decade if you're Kansas City, and you figure aside from what they're paying Bobby Witt Jr. in salary, they're going to make that money back in jerseys and merchandise sales because people are going to buy Bobby Witt Jr. jerseys, and of course Kansas City is a sports town where they gravitate, to their local guys. Just look at, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce now in the NFL. You think about George Brett, from a generation before, in Kansas City. So nonetheless, um, they're trying. But if you're Pittsburgh, what in the world are you doing? If you're Colorado, what in the world are you doing? If you're the Marlins, teams like that, and I think they're the ones who give, um, you know, like the teams that are going out there and are trying to spend, a bad name, and they really make them look bad. That's just my thoughts on it. And it looks like Andy and AJ's signal dropped there for a moment. Guys, are you there?
You got you got a black screen
Okay. All right. But
for you. Like we can see us. I don't.
okay, I
Yeah, we're
all right, I got your small. Okay, there you go. There you go.
we're
Okay.
back. We can hear you, but we just see a black screen.
Okay, I can see I
There
can
you
see
are.
Now
I
we
can
see
see
you.
you. Okay. All righty. Um so what are your thoughts? Do you think in 2027 that we get 162 games, and B, are we going to have baseball all together in 2027 as a whole?
Hmm. Short answer, I would say no. I think this is going to be a bigger problem than anybody's anticipating because there's too much money right now, and kind of an issue you alluded to before. The markets are there is too much space in between the markets. Uh, like a market like even Milwaukee or Colorado versus LA and the Yankees, like forget about it. But I mean, getting back to what you were talking about, like as far as something like the Marlins, it's the same sort of thing as like with Las Vegas. Tampa Bay has the same issue. There's there's a lot more to do in Florida than go to a baseball game, and the last thing you want to do is go to a baseball game in the summertime out in the heat outside, and I'd rather be at the beach. I mean, how many people are like really buying season tickets to the Marlins or the Rays? It's hot as hell out there, you know. It's and there's more stuff to do out there. Now, if I live in Milwaukee, drink beer and go to baseball games, you know. But I mean, as far as like my I said it was a short answer prediction, but it's a long. I made this a big, long drawn out rant. Yeah, I think there's just too much space in between, and too much variance in between teams being run as a business. As far as like Milwaukee Brewers and even the Tigers, Kansas City versus like a juggernaut like the Dodgers you know or the Yankees or even the Mets. I mean, there's too much to be dealt with.
Mhm.
There's too much money. There's the money that you're paying Juan Soto. I mean, every player is going to feel like they have a case to make that kind of money, you know? And it's just it's insane.
I think you stand a real possibility of missing an entire season, and I say that because you are not you're not just adjusting what luxury tax is or adjusting the rules or tweaking the system that's already in place. You're trying to institute an entire new rule that's a hard cap, and I just see it being such a controversial issue that even, my thought was being an optimist. Well, when the season starts and they're starting to lose money on games, they'll try and salvage the season. You might get a shortened season, right? You might get half a season, and they'll figure some way to do that. But I think that they're going to be so dug in on this, both sides. You're trying to institute something that is just the union will never want to go for. I can see you losing an entire season.
So, I mean, speaking of that, Andy, real quick, that might be the next thing. I mean, we're already talking about, we've already got a pitch clock.
Okay, looks, guys, are you there?
Back, back here.
Guys, are
Hey,
you there?
William.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I can,
Yeah, we
I,
don't know what.
I
Can
can
you see
hear.
us?
I can't see you, but I can hear you. I can hear you.
It's the same way for us. We can hear you, but we can't see you.
All righty, let's
All
listen.
right, we
Listen.
can start to wrap this up a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
listen. Let's just keep rolling there with your final thoughts on this, as far as
Yeah,
getting a season in for 2027.
my final thought is that might be the next bargaining chip is shortening the MLB season. I mean, we got 162 games.
Hmm.
It would be an obvious thing. Well, let's shorten the season. We people's attention spans are short, and owners are going to hate that. They're not going to go for it. But players and coaches, I'm sure, would absolutely love trimming down the season to anything less than 162 games. Because as we all know, once it gets to the postseason, it really ain't about baseball anymore. It's just about attrition. Who's the healthiest team at the end of the season? That's who's winning the last game of the year.
I mean, I don't think that anybody agrees to a cut down the season, because I think cutting down the season means less revenue. And of course, if you're the owners and you're making less revenue, you're not going to be willing to pay the guys the same amount of money that they're currently getting. Uh, Listen, I'm with Andy on this. It would really not surprise me if we don't see baseball at all for 2027. And I think Major League Baseball, I think they are walking the fine, that fine line of the razor's edge right there. Because, like we said before, the popularity of baseball in comparison to football and basketball is not what it was. You think about it, late April, and this is like when baseball is starting to get it going, is dominated now by the NFL draft and the NBA playoffs. We're here in July, the heart of baseball season, and you got a chunk of people for this month who paid attention to free agency in the NBA, and now I can't tell you how many people I talk to. Man, when's training camp starting? When are we going to see football again? And of course, the preseason is here,
Right.
and guys are ready to get that going. And you figure even the last month of the season, of the regular season, September, more people are focused on the start of the NFL and, of course, the start of college football. And I think there's more, attention to it, come the playoffs. But even with the World Series, it's kind of like, okay, there's a World Series game on tonight, but most people they get up that day and they're focused on, the NFL or college, if it's a Saturday or Sunday. So if you're baseball, you don't, and I repeat, you don't want to flirt with that. But I think at the end of the day, the egos on both sides are going to allow this to get to that point. And I know it took a lot for baseball to recover, after the 94 strike. And I think we were all around for that one. And we remember the harm that it caused. If they allow that to
Mhm.
happen again, I'm not sure if baseball recovers this time. I'm really not sure.
I think you're right. I
Yeah,
agree.
I agree. Well, with that, I guess, William, I'll let you have the last word.
Listen, as always, guys, I thank you so much for joining me on here and chiming in. We got a lot covered in what I consider, a pretty, decent amount of time. And, like I've always told you, please don't be strangers. We've got a lot to talk about, especially with college football and the NFL seasons, respectively, right around the corner. So, like I always say, you gents are always welcome back to discuss those topics. And before we do sign off, please, 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 let the folks out there know where they can find you at.
We're the Small Market Podcast. Our handles for everything are at Small Market Podcast. Tucking Hoffman on everything. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts,
All the social
all the
medias.
social medias. Yeah, we've got an Instagram. We're always posting to our stories, Facebook. We've also got our own individual Facebook pages too. So if anyone ever wants to be a guest or you've got a great sports story, reach out to us and we'd love to have you on our show as well.
Listen, AJ and Andy, as always, thanks again. I appreciate it. And for everybody who checked this out, y'all know what to do. If you like what you heard and saw on this podcast, hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. Like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, you can check me out on the X, formerly known as Twitter, at 300 Pounds of Sports. You give me that follow, I'll give you that follow right back. And the same can be said for Instagram, where you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Also, you can check us out on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365, which, as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports debating groups going on social media. So, for AJ and Andy, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again to everybody for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.